Putin thanks the Russian army for ending the civil war after the Wagner Mutiny. Vladimir Putin thanked the Russian military for preventing civil war from breaking out after the Wagner Group's 24-hour diversion over the weekend. The President of Russia, speaking from the Kremlin, told the army, security forces and National Guard of about 2,500 people that they had brought the country out of the crisis. The Wagner bloc led by Yevgeny Prigozhin briefly protested as soldiers marched to Moscow, demanding the murder of Russian military leaders accused of waging war in Ukraine. Security, you protected the law, life, security and freedom of our citizens, you saved our country from the crisis, Putin said. You actually stopped the war. In another speech on Tuesday, he added that Wagner's military group was financed by the Russian state, saying that if the attack were successful, Russian enemies would take advantage of the situation. Russia's defense lawyer on Tuesday. Putin is also interested in Sergei Shoigu, whose dismissal is one of the main demands. Previously, the Russian government denied ties to the group and said it was illegal because private soldiers were illegal Russian lawyers. Prigozhin, a former ally of Putin, is said to be in Belarus after Saturday's attack. The situation ended after Belarus reached an agreement between the Kremlin and the Wagner leadership. While the exact whereabouts of Prigozhin is still unclear, U.S. Intelligence Chief Mark Warner, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told NBC News, Sky's U.S. partner, that Prigozhin was reportedly staying at the only windowless hotel in Minsk. The 62-year-old man has not been seen since he was sacked from Rostov, Russia, after he told his men to leave on Saturday. Read more. Prigozhin and his private army, what's next? Putin warned that all blackmail will fail after the coup attempt. Tracking data for flight shows that a Russian-registered commercial aircraft associated with Prigozhin flew from Russia to Belarus early Tuesday, Flight Radar 24 reported. The Embraer Legacy 600 jet was linked to Prigozhin in U.S. criminal records. After the attack, Prigozhin said that this was not an attempt to overthrow the government, and decided to halt Moscow's advance to avoid bloodshed. On Tuesday, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that the protracted conflict between the Russian army and Wagner was misdirected, and ordered the Belarusian army to be ready to engage each other. Wherever you get the podcast, subscribe to Sky News Daily. Don't make me a hero, it's not me, Putin or Prigozhin, because we let the situation fall into our hands and then we thought it came out, but it didn't. Two men fighting on the front lines clashed. There is no hero in this. He is a critic of the main forces of the Kremlin, especially Mr. Shoigu and Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov, whom he accuses of not protecting the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. During the war, 2 years of power, the world's eyes are still on Russia after that. Speaking at the Kremlin on Tuesday, Putin thanked the Russian army and security forces for preventing what he called war in his own country. Broadcasting the country by radio on Monday, the president described opposition organizations as terrorists and promised to bring them to justice. He also said that the opposition would have been crushed if Prigozhin had not intervened in the Kremlin, which reportedly exiled him to Belarus. Rebellion questioned Putin's staying in power and what would happen next in the country. While some analysts expect a dismissal from Putin, who is trying to restore his authority in the country, many do not believe that peace between Prigozhin and his followers will continue. Nationally, President Joe Biden made it clear on Monday that the United States did not participate in the weekend protests. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for more support from Western leaders to step back against Russian aggression. European foreign ministers and NATO officials pledged new military aid to Ukraine on Monday, increasing EU military aid from €3.5 billion, $3.8 billion, to €12 billion over the next few years. In a late-night video speech, Zelensky also praised the Ukrainian military for advancing in all directions, late Monday after spending a day visiting the military in eastern and southern Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday thanked Russia's military and security services for preventing what he said was civil war in the face of armed protests over the weekend. Speaking at the Kremlin, Putin told about 2,500 members of the army, security forces and National Guard that they were protecting their men from the crisis. You took care of the law, life, security and freedom of our citizens. You saved our country from chaos. You actually stopped the war, Putin said. You have shown your responsibility for the fate and future of your country. The Kremlin said earlier Tuesday that it disagreed with Wagner's assessment that the added increase in the staff group holiday has affected Putin's two-year vacation. He died in combat, he said. They have no patience and respect for the command and military service, he said, calling for a minute's silence due to the death of the pilot. Russian Technology Minister Sergei Shoigu was also in the square, and Wagner President Yevgeny Prigozhin asked him to withdraw.